name is Jensy, and I have elected to read some stories today from Johann Peter Hebel. They're very short stories, so I'll read 4 or 5 and then stop and read 4 or 5 more. Some of the words in them are very Germanic, so please forgive me if I mispronounce them. I'll do my best. The Silver Spoon. An officer in Vienna was thinking, just for once, I'll dine at the Red Ox. And into the Red Ox he went. There were regulars there and strangers, important and unimportant people, honest men and rascals, as you'll find anywhere. They were eating and drinking, some a great deal, others little. They talked and argued about this and that, about how it had rained rocks at Stannern in Monrovia, for instance, or about Machen, who fought the great wolf in France. When the meal was almost over, one or two were drinking a small jug of Tokay to round things off. One man was making little balls from breadcrumbs, as if he were an apothecary making pills. Another was fiddling with his knife or his fork or his silver spoon. It was then the officer happened to notice how a fellow in a green huntsman's coat was playing with a silver spoon when it suddenly disappeared up his sleeve and stayed there. Someone else might have thought, it's no business of mine, and said nothing, or it made a great fuss. The officer thought, I don't know who this green spoon hunter is, and what I might let myself in for. And he kept as quiet as a mouse until the landlord came to collect his money. When the landlord came to collect his money, the officer too picked up a silver spoon and tucked it through 2 buttonholes in his coat, in one and out the other, as soldiers sometimes do in war when they take their spoons with them, but no soup. As the officer was paying his bill, the landlord was looking at his coat and thinking, that's a funny medal this gentleman's wearing. He must have distinguished himself battling with a bowl of crayfish soup to have got a silver spoon as a medal. Or could it just be one of mine? But when the officer had paid the landlord, he said, without a sign of a smile on his face, spoons included, I take it. The bill seems enough to cover it. The landlord said, nobody's tried that one on me before. If you don't have a spoon at home, I'll give you a tin one, but you can't have one of my silver spoons. Then the officer stood up, slapped the landlord on the shoulder and laughed. It was only a joke we were having, he said. That gentleman over there in the green jacket and me, my green friend. If you give back that spoon you have up your sleeve, I'll give mine back too. When the spoon hunter saw that he had been caught in the act and that an honest eye had observed his dishonest hand, he thought, better pretend it was a joke, and gave back his spoon. So the landlord got his property back, and the spoon thief smiled too, but not for long. For when the other customers saw what had happened, they set about him with curses and hounded him out of the Holy of Holies, and the landlord sent the boots after him with a big stick. But he stood the worthy officer a bottle of Tokay to toast the health of all honest men. Remember, you must not steal silver spoons. Also remember, someone will always stand up for what is right. The cheap meal. There's an old saying, the biter is sometimes bit. But the landlord of the Lion in a certain little town was bitten first. He received a well-dressed customer who curtly demanded a good bowl of broth, the best his money would buy. Then he ordered beef and vegetables too for his money. The landlord asked him, all politeness, if he wouldn't like a glass of wine to go with it. Indeed I would, his guest replied, if I can have a good one for my money. When he had finished, and he enjoyed it all, he took a worn 6-cruiser piece from his pocket and said, here you are, landlord, there's my money. The landlord said, what's this? You owe me $1. The customer answered, well, I didn't ask for a meal for $1, but for my money. Here it is, it's all I have. If you gave me too much for it, then That's your fault. It wasn't really such a clever trick. It called only for cheek, and the devil may care of you of the consequences. The best is yet to come. You're an utter villain, said the landlord, and don't deserve this. But you can have the meal for nothing, and take this 24 kreutzer bit with you. Just keep quiet about it and go over to my neighbor who keeps the bear and try the same trick on him. He said this because he had had a quarrel with his neighbor and resented his success, and each was keen to do the other down. But the artful customer smiled as he took the money he was offered in his one hand and reached carefully for the door with the other, wished the innkeeper good afternoon, and said, I went to the bear first. It was the landlord there who sent me over here. So really, both of the innkeepers had been tricked. The cunning customer took advantage of their quarrel, yet he might have also earned a further reward. Grateful thanks from both of them if they had learned the right lesson from it and had made things up between them. For peace pays, whereas quarrels must be paid for. Dinner outside. We often complain how difficult or impossible it is to get on with certain people. That may, of course, be true, but many such people are not bad, but only strange. And if you got to know them well, with all their ins and outs, and learnt to deal with them properly, neither too willfully nor too indulgently, then many of them might easily be brought to their senses. After all, one servant did manage to do that with his master. Sometimes he could do nothing right by him, and as often happens in such situations, was blamed for many things that were not his fault. Thus, one day his master came home in a very bad mood and sat down to dinner. The soup was too hot or too cold for him, or neither, no matter. He was in a bad mood. So he picked up the dish and threw it and its contents out the open window and into the yard below. So what do you think the servant did? He didn't hesitate. He threw the meat he was bringing to the table down into the yard after the soup, then the bread, the wine, and finally the tablecloth and everything on it, all down into the yard too. What the devil do you think you're doing? Said his master angrily and rose threateningly to his feet. But the servant replied quietly and calmly, Pardon me if I misunderstood your wishes. I thought you wanted to eat outside today. The air's warm, the sky's blue, and look how lovely the apple blossom is. How happy the bees are sipping at the flowers. Never again would the soup go out through the window. His master saw he was wrong, cheered up at the sight of the beautiful spring day, smiled to himself at his man's quick thinking, and in his heart was grateful to him for teaching him a lesson. The clever judge. Not everything that happens in the East is so wrong. We're told the following event took place there. A rich man had been careless and lost a large sum of money sewn up in a cloth. He made his loss known, and in the usual way offered a reward for its return, in this case, $100. Thalers. Soon, a good, honest man came to see him. I found your money, he said. This must be yours. He had the open look of an upright fellow with a clear conscience, and that was good. The rich man looked happy too, but only at seeing his precious money again. As for his honesty, that we shall see. He counted the money and worked out quickly how he could cheat the man of the promised reward. My friend, he said, there were in fact 800 thalers sewn up in this cloth, but I can find only 700. So I take it you must have cut open a corner and taken your 100 thalers reward. You acted quite properly. I thank you. That was not good, but we haven't got to the end yet. Honesty is the best policy, and wrongdoing never proves right. The honest man who had found the money and who was less concerned for his reward than for his blameless name protested that he had found the packet just as he had handed it over, and had handed over exactly what he had found. In the end, they appeared in court. Both of them stuck to their stories. One, that 800 thalers were sewn up in the cloth. The other, that he had left the packet just as he found it and had taken nothing from it. It was hard to know what to do, but the clever judge, who seemed from the outset to recognize the honesty of the one and the bad faith of the other, approached the problem as follows. He had both swear their statements on solemn oath and then pass the following judgment. Since one of you lost 800 thalers and the other found a package containing only 700, the package found by that second party cannot be the one to which the first party has just claim. You, my honest friend, take back the money you found and put it into safekeeping until the person who lost only 700 thalers makes himself known. And you, I can only advise to be patient until someone says he has found your 800 thalers. That was his judgment, and that was final. The Artful Hazar. A Hazar in the last war knew that the farmer he met on the road had just sold his hay for 100 guilders and was on his way home with the money. So he asked him for something to buy tobacco and brandy. Who knows, he might have been happy with a few coppers. But the farmer swore black and blue he had spent his last cruiser in the nearby village and had nothing left. If we weren't so far from my quarters, said the Hazar, we could both be helped out of this difficulty. But you have nothing, and neither have I. So we'll just have to go to St. Alphonsus. We'll share what he gives us like brothers. This St. Alphonsus stood carved from stone in an old little frequented chapel in the fields. At first, the farmer was not too keen to make the pilgrimage, but the Hazar allowed no objection, and on the way, he was so vigorous in his assurances that St. Alphonsus had never let him down when in need, the farmer began to cherish hopes himself. So you think the Hazar's comrade and accomplice was hiding in the deserted chapel, do you? Not a bit of it. No one was there, only the stone figure of Alphonsus. And they knelt before him, and the Hazar appeared to be praying fervently. This is it, he whispered to the farmer. The saint has just beckoned to me. He got to his feet and put his ear to the lips of stone and came back delighted. He's given me a guilder, he says. It's in my purse. And indeed, to the other's amazement, the Hazar took out a guilder, but one that he had had there all the time, and shared it like a brother, as promised. That made sense to the farmer, and he agreed that the Hazar should try again. All went just as before. This time, the Hazar was even happier when he came back to the farmer. Now St. Alphonsus has given us 100 guilders all in one go. They're in your purse. The farmer turned deadly white when he heard this and repeated his protest that he had no money at all. But the Hazar persuaded him he must trust St. Alphonsus and just take a look. So Alphonsus had never deceived him. So whether he liked it or not, he had to turn his pockets inside out and empty them. Then the 100 guilders appeared all right, and since he had taken half of the Hazar's guilder, it was no use pleading and imploring. He had to share his 100. That was all very artful and cunning, but that doesn't make it right, especially in a chapel. Thanks for your time. I'll read a couple more stories, and you can find me where you found these before. Have a good day.